Hi, I'm Rachel Lancaster, and this is the Magnificent Midlife Podcast. This is where we celebrate women in midlife and beyond. We challenge the status quo and bash those negative stereotypes about being an older woman. We're not over the hill at 40, 50, 60. We're just getting started, and the world needs us now more than ever. I'll be talking all things midlife and sharing some fabulous stories of amazing women doing very cool stuff. Now's our time.
Hello, it's Rachel here, just me for a change. I thought it was time for me to come on and do a little pandemic pondering. It's a weird old world we're living in, isn't it? It's just utterly crazy. If you think back at the start of the year, if anybody had described the situation that we're now living in to any of us and said this is what life will be like in April, we'd have laughed, wouldn't we? We'd have thought it was utterly impossible, and yet now life has changed beyond all recognition, and yet we're all adapting. I think that's been one of the amazing things for me to see, is that actually we can adapt to anything. We can modify the way we live in quite radical ways when we have to. So I think there's some quite good stuff to come out of that. I've been really struggling to process what's going on, and I'm sure I'm not alone. I think I've probably been going through all those 5 stages of grief or 6 stages of behavioural change all at the same time. Give me the denial, the anger, the bargaining, the depression. Not quite there with acceptance yet. It'd be really nice if I could get to acceptance, and then I could start, developing myself, making the most of this time under lockdown. Because on the one hand, I think that sounds like a really great idea, and it is for many of us a time when we can be taking some time to do other things and expand ourselves. But at the same time, it's just really, really hard to accept and process everything. And I think we're all going through grief for the loss of control that we have over our lives and what is happening to all of the people out there in the world. I mean, me and my husband, I think we probably know about 11 people who've been sick now. And we know of 2 people who've died. One is a friend of my husband's, and the other is the father of a friend of my son's. So one is in New York and one is here in London, and both men. And I keep seeing this statistic that, men are more susceptible to this illness than women, and I wonder why that is. I have all sorts of ideas, but I wonder what the reason is for that. But I think this grieving for the world, and that's certainly what I'm going through. I'm not scared of the virus for myself, and I never have been, but I am worried about what it has done to the world and what it is doing to all the people who are suffering terribly, and the people who've died in a hospital with nobody there to hold their hand and smile at them. I think that is going to change, and that people will be allowed to go in and say their last goodbyes. But that's been really shocking, hasn't it? It's just been really difficult to cope with that idea. So I'm often feeling rather numb. I think I've been trying to numb myself. I've certainly been overdoing it on the wine. That's been a bit of a crutch for me. So I'm going to have to rethink my relationship with alcohol. It's strange because, as an introvert and working from home, my life hasn't actually changed that much. I'm still doing what I do from home. I'm, recording podcasts, I'm writing blogs, I'm managing my members club, I'm writing, I'm doing my writing project. Life has not really changed that much, and yet it's changed completely and utterly and radically. I don't think it'll ever be the same. I actually hope it won't go back to normal, but I'll get to that in a little bit. But first of all, I wanted to, just touch on what my life is now. So In the mornings, I get up very early, and with my husband, we go on a walk. So we often leave the house at just after 6 in the morning, and we're usually home by 7:30, 8 o'clock. And we go for a wonderful walk in North London. And one of the wonderful things in the last week that has really given us some focus, both to the day and to just feeling that we're doing something, because it's really tricky. I missed the boat with the NHS volunteering, and I haven't been able to apply for that. And I've actually struggled to find opportunities. I've been looking at the Age UK website, can I sign up to call somebody, just to talk to anybody who would like to have a regular conversation. But just making that happen seems quite tricky. So if you've managed to do that and you have ideas for me, please let me know. So every morning we set out and we walk along this waterway, and we've been getting really annoyed with all the litter everywhere. So we actually decided that we were going to start picking it up. When this all kicked off, I actually bought a couple of packets of plastic gloves. Much as I hate anything plastic, I know I hate it, but at the moment, it just needs must, isn't it? So we'll take it in turns to touch the rubbish, but we take a big plastic bag with us and we go out and we pick up rubbish. And then we were also thinking there's all this rubbish in the waterway and we can't actually get to it. So my husband bought a big, long picker-upper. It's one of those grabbers, when you see the people in the park who are, the professional rubbish picker-uppers, they have these things. And we bought one. It's an extra long one. So he can lean into the water and pull out plastic bags and bottles and cans and coats and scarves and all sorts of interesting things. And so we've been doing that and pulling the stuff out and then bagging it up and taking it along. We've made friends with the local park attendant who actually was kind enough to give us a whole load of bags the other day. He said, well, you can use these. I don't know if you'd like to join me on this, if you're going out for a walk and maybe, I remember when I was a kid, there was the Keep Britain Tidy campaign, and it was drilled into me that you didn't drop litter, that you picked it up and you took it with you and you put it, in a bin. Doesn't seem to be the case anymore. I think we need another Keep Britain Tidy campaign, and there's certainly a Keep the World Tidy campaign. But if you feel inspired, I've definitely been inspired by Healthy Happy 50, Jo Moseley, who I've interviewed twice on this podcast, and who, first of all, she used to do her 2-minute beach clean when she went paddleboarding in the sea or surfing in the sea. And then when she did her coast-to-coast paddleboarding, last year, she picked up litter as she went along that route. And so I've always been inspired by this, and I'm really glad that I'm able to do it now as well. And I think it will become an absolute habit. When I'm not needing to wear the plastic gloves to keep myself safe, I hope I'll carry a little bag, a cloth bag possibly by that stage, to put rubbish in as I go about the world, because there is so much rubbish. And now when I go out, it's all plastic gloves and face masks on the floor. And I just think, come on, guys, stop it. Oh, and my other rant, please, if you see anybody with a dog who picks up their dog's poo in a plastic bag and then puts the plastic bag on the ground or ties it, even worse, ties it to a fence, please tell them not to. Or if, I doubt it's you, because I don't think anybody who does that is going to be listening to my podcast, but if you see anybody, please challenge them on it, because who do they think is going to pick up their dog's poo in the bag? Especially when it's on a bit of wild waterway where people just don't go. The litter collection there, I guess, is probably, once a fortnight or something like that. I don't know. Certainly from the amount of litter we're picking up every day, it's not particularly regular. So if you see anybody, please challenge them on that, because it is the most disgusting thing that you can possibly do. I mean, by all means, pick up your dog's poo, but take it with you. Do not leave it for somebody else to pick it up. Do not tie it to a fence so that somebody has got to either untie it or rip it off and therefore leave, bits of plastic hanging on the fence. Anyway, that's another rant. One other thing I'm doing every day is that I'm talking to my mum. Now, I absolutely hate the fact that I can't go and see my mum. She's 2 hours away from me. She's up in Birmingham. She struggles with technology. She used to be really quite good at it, and she's got worse at it, and she doesn't listen to my podcast. So, Mum, if you are listening to this, well done, because you're finally listening to a podcast that I've done. But one thing I have done, I got her an iPad a few years ago, and she struggled with that because first of all, she had a PC, and then she had a laptop, and then she had an iPad. And I think each stage of changing the interface that she had to deal with has made it difficult, but she doesn't have a smartphone. So, but on the iPad, she can do FaceTime using her email address. So every day I make her do FaceTime. And I think she would agree that that has made an enormous difference to her. It's certainly made an enormous difference to me because we can see each other and we can see each other smile. And even last Sunday, on Easter Sunday, we had a virtual Sunday lunch together, and she had her lunch and we had our lunch, and we propped up the iPads and we were able to chat to each other over lunch. So if you have an older relative who's got an iPad and you can possibly get them onto FaceTime, or if they're savvy enough, and you're on Android, do WhatsApp or Zoom or whatever it is, but try and see them on camera if you possibly can, because that is making a huge difference. I have my husband here, and I'm very, very grateful that I have him at home, and I have a garden as well, and I'm just so utterly grateful for that. But the two other people that I love most in the world, my mum is a long way away, and my son is even further away. He's on the other side of the Atlantic. He's in the other global epicenter. He's in New York. But fortunately, he's very savvy. I think you may have heard on another podcast, he's half Chinese. And his dad has been under quarantine in China since this began. So we've been aware of what was happening and what was to come from the beginning, and have been, following the news very carefully. So he's very savvy, thank goodness. He's not silly. He's doing his social distancing. He's staying home. He's buying his food, I don't know, once every 3 weeks or something. I hope he's eating all right. But he's doing all right. But it's a horrible feeling to know that if he were to need me, I couldn't even get to him. I know so many families are having to cope with this now because of the travel restrictions, even within the same country, and not being able to go to hospital because of trying to stop the spread. But it's a horrid feeling knowing that I can't get to him. So anyway, there you go. So, it's clapping every Thursday. That's a lot of fun. I like doing that. I'd like to do it every night. I started doing it every night, and I think people were just sort of thinking I was the crazy lady banging her saucepan. So it's gone back to just every Thursday now. But it's a nice thing to do. But I saw a video the other day that had been put out that was talking about all the nurses and medical staff who come from abroad. And if you've listened to my podcast for any length of time, you'll know that I'm not a fan of Brexit. And I find it, so sad that so many of these people who have died on our behalf, and these people who are working so hard to save us, so many of them have come from abroad, and the whole Brexit situation made them feel so unwelcome. And now I am so grateful to them for still sticking by us and still being there. But when I hear of us flying in Romanians to pick the fruit and vegetables, my blood starts to boil, not because I don't welcome them, I absolutely do, but the fact that A, we don't have enough people to do it ourselves, and B, we don't want those people. We've said we don't want these people taking our jobs or whatever it might be. Well, guess what? I've always said since the Brexit debate started, who's gonna pick the fucking strawberries? But anyway, moving swiftly on before I start ranting too much on that one. So, what about the future? I know a lot of people are already thinking, where do we go from here? What is life going to look like after the pandemic? When will that be? goodness knows, I can't see anything going back to even a vague normal before we have a vaccination, because this virus is, potentially going to carry on mutating. There have been reports in Korea of people being infected a second time round, and how do we continue to shield the ones that are vulnerable, the ones, and everybody that's vulnerable, it's not obviously visible who is vulnerable, is it? Because there are so many of us who have invisible illnesses that you just don't know about. So some countries are, talking about easing restrictions and trying to kickstart economies. And by kickstarting economies, they're going to try and push consumption. But perhaps consumption and overconsumption is part of the reason why we are where we are. And I think it's interesting that a lot of people may have got used to not wanting so much anymore. Last year, I did a whole year where I didn't buy any new clothing. I did a podcast around Christmas time where I talked about that. But I found it remarkably easy because I discovered that you could buy secondhand clothes on eBay. And I bought some really nice stuff. And as the year went on, I bought less and less stuff because, that whole sort of buying muscle was much reduced and much weakened. And I think that will be the case for all of us, because we won't have been able to buy anything, and everything shifts, doesn't it? It's like when somebody dies, your priorities shift, and well, everything's different, isn't it? Everything what you want in life becomes different when somebody close to you dies. And I think with this, it has made everybody shift and think again about what really is important, and it's become community, it's become family, it's become the people who love us. It's not stuff. I've long said that, the older I've got, the less important stuff has become to me. But I think the less important stuff is going to be to everybody. So if kickstarting the economy is reliant on getting us to buy more stuff again, maybe the economy needs to change. Maybe our lives need to change. Maybe we need to carry on living locally, buying locally, holidaying locally. We will have proved that so many of us can work from home. So, those parents who've struggled with having to go into an office and also do childcare can now say, well, hang on a minute, I was actually able to do that under lockdown and I performed perfectly adequately, so I want to carry on doing that. Whole things are going to change. I'm actually very excited about that. And I think also, I know that I feel excited about the possibilities for change, because when people were having, all the climate discussions before coronavirus kicked off, Greta Thunberg was asking us to act now. This was an emergency. We needed to take swift action right now. And the world's leaders said, we can't do that. Can't possibly do that. Well, guess what? We've done it now. We've done it in some places for over a month. That the planes have stopped, the cars have stopped, and the air is clearer, and the bird song in North London has to be heard to be believed. We used to have aeroplanes, and we're on North London, so we're nowhere near Heathrow, but we used to have airplanes flying over once a minute, and you'd hear them. I got used to them, so I didn't hear them so much. But my husband used to get really irritated by them sitting at the bottom of the garden. He's a Yorkshireman, so he craved the quiet places in Yorkshire. But now, it's like we go plane spotting. We see a plane. It's like, oh, look, there's a plane. It must feel like people, in the 1920s or 1930s. When did flying around the world start? But it must feel like that. You're looking for a plane in the sky rather than just assuming that they're there. So things have really changed, and we have proved that we can do different things. We can live differently. And I really, really, really hope that we carry on doing that. And I think we owe it to the world to do that, because the other thing that's, preying on my mind is it's all very well the way that we Westerners are suffering. But what's going to happen? Well, it is already happening. But how is it going to evolve in an Indian or African slum where they don't have 2 meters to socially distance? They don't have running water to wash their hands. They don't have soap. They've never heard of hand sanitizer. There aren't enough face masks to go around 20 people, let alone 20 million. What's going to happen then? That's what worries me. And I can't help thinking that it is our consumerism, it is our global travel. Well, I know it's our global travel that led to this spreading around the world so quickly. So these are the things I'm pondering on. What will the world look like post-pandemic? I don't want to go back to normal. I want us to seize this opportunity that we've been given. I think Mother Earth has, somebody put on Twitter today, has sent us all to our bedrooms to consider what we're doing. And it feels a bit like that. It's like, I want to breathe. Just, leave me alone. Let it all go quiet and still. And let us all take some space to contemplate our role in the past, our role now, and what we want the future to look like. Because we have an opportunity to create a new future. I'm quite excited by that. So, in my day-to-day struggles to sort of process this, I still want to be able to do something. I think, a lot of us just feel, I want to be able to do something. So here's my podcast. This is my gift. The podcast, not just me wittering on, but my wonderful interviews. And if you haven't listened to the recent episodes, do check out, for example, Dr. Catherine Mannix, who is one of the most inspirational women I've ever met. She's a palliative care doctor. She's the author of the best-selling book With the End in Mind. She wants us all to get more comfortable talking about death and dying. It's not a sad episode. It's a really fun, uplifting episode. And I could have talked to Catherine for hours, days. She has the most amazingly soothing voice, and she's so wise. If you need to be having those sorts of conversations, and I think actually we all do go and listen, because that podcast will empower you to start having those conversations. And if you want to expand, on your creativity, because by it, what I've learned is that we're all creative. I never considered myself very creative, but here I am doing a podcast, and I'm a blogger, and I'm a writer, and I'm this, and I'm that. And the more creative things I do, the happier I am, the more fulfilled I feel. So if you want to take some of this time, if you're able to expand on your creativity and develop it, then listen to Creativity Under Lockdown, my podcast interview with Christy Glasgow, otherwise known as Chatterbox Christy. That's an awful lot of fun. She's hilarious, and she's got some great ideas for starting to develop your creativity. So there's other things I have as well on the website on magnificentmidlife.com. So I have a resources and support blog post. I've got tips for dealing with anxiety. I've got blog posts about things to be doing while we're all stuck at home. So there's lots of things there, and also I have my Magnificent Midlife Members Club, which is currently free. I just thought it would be really nice. Most women will say they don't have enough time to do workshops and online courses, and they tend to put themselves at the bottom of the list. Well, maybe you have a little bit more time now, and maybe you can go. And the Members Club is a fabulous resource. It's a sort of smorgasbord of everything you might want to help you in midlife. I have pre-recorded workshops with fabulous experts on mindfulness, financial security, movement, weight loss, living with courage, starting a business, looking at possibility, looking after your liver, coping with an empty nest, getting good sleep, better relationships, intimacy, pleasure, all sorts of things. So that is currently free. So you just go to magnificentmidlife.com/members club, and then you can enter the code, one word, 3 months free at checkout. So, why not? Just go and check it out. You don't need to even put in your credit card details. It is my gift to everybody while we're under lockdown. So that brings me to the end of my pandemic ponderings. I'd love to know how you're feeling. If you would like to share your writing or your creativity, or you have a wonderful story to share with the Magnificent Midlife community, please do get in touch. You can just email me at rachel@magnificentmidlife.com and I will read every single email, I promise. All right, so have a great weekend, week, whatever time is coming up for you soon. Stay calm, stay sane, stay magnificent, and we will all be stronger at the end of this. We just need to get through it, but we will. We'll get through it, and we will be, hopefully, in a much better place by the end of it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Magnificent Midlife Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, share it, and leave me a review on iTunes or wherever you're listening. You can find out more information about this episode in the show notes at magnificentmidlife.com. That's also where you'll find strategies, support, and resources to help make your midlife magnificent. Why not sign up for a midlife breakthrough call with me to get clarity on how to make the most of your next chapter? Don't get stuck in what can sometimes be the messy middle. Help me change the world, one magnificent midlife woman at a time.